Hello everyone, Alan here. This is bookmarks I made for people last March. I'm going to be doing the reading shifts tag tonight. Very thoughtful tag original by Hannah at Hannah's Books. And I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat with Pat, and also Daniela at The Uncommon Reader. And links to their videos below. It's a very thoughtful tag, and at first I was gonna kind of skip over some of the questions, the life questions, but I'm gonna answer them. And this might be a chatty tag, so feel free to listen to it at 1.5 speed like I do when I watch YouTube. Nothing wrong with that, because I'm going to open up about my life and some periods in my life. I was talking about jail and prison in the live show last night a wee bit. Now, Brian at Bookish is kind of interested in my stories, and that I just turned 62 in December, so I'm not a kid anymore, and I have a lot of stories. So Brian he's been after me to write a memoir. I do have a MFA in creative writing. I've been a writer all my life, although I haven't written too much in the past few years, except poems, and they appeared in the Stygian Society. They're only doing Canadian writers now. Yeah, no longer American. I still support them, and I get the magazines. I'm a lifelong subscriber. So I had 3 poems in there. They paid me $25 per poem. So hey, better than a kick in the ass, as my dad says. So and some other magazines. I'm looking over there. They escaped me. I wasn't planning on talking about that. But let's get into it. I'm just warning you. So thanks for the warning, Al, about the prison stuff coming out. Because I read a lot in the joint. I'll get to it. There's 7 questions that are longish. 1, how has your reading developed over your lifetime? Okay. Do the kind of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? So, boy, I tell a story. My mother taught me to read through the newspaper in Toledo, Ohio, and there were traveling salesmen back then who sold encyclopedias and things, and my parents bought a set, and along with that came books of stories, and they were colored books. I remember, and the first story I remember reading is The 5 Chinese Brothers. It's a story from the 30s, and it's a kind of a interesting story. I mean, like there's 5 brothers that they can't die. One can swallow the ocean, one you can't chop his head off, one you can't burn in an oven, things like that. It's kind of outrageous when you think about it, and kind of racist. But it's a story. I'll put it up here. Read it. Famous story. So I was reading that, and then I remember reading like movie books, like Robert Redford in Con Game. What was that movie? The Sting. Oh my God. I read that in book form because Redford's character is named Hooker in that. Hooker, like John Lee Hooker. So I remember reading that, and then I was an early reader in junior high, and I was reading like Castaneda and things. I was reading Waiting for Godot in early in high school, honors English. Um, then philosophy and theater, plays, and that in undergrad school. I was a theater major, so I read plays exclusively and wrote plays and scripts and tried to send them to Hollywood and things. And but I was always reading. If I'm not reading a book, I feel like I'm wasting time. Then I've had a lot of interest too. I've had interest in Buddhism for decades, so I read a lot of Buddhist texts, a lot of Shrimpal Rinpoche, um, uh, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying he wrote, Charlotte Beck. I like, the Mud Lotus. I can picture him. Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, I love him. Let's see. I'll get to two. I'm about ready to sneeze, so I'm going to pause. If you ever find yourself about ready to sneeze and you don't want to, think of the color purple. Not the book, but the color. You can imagine that color, like maybe in your third eye, purple. It will suppress the sneeze. But with allergies like mine, well, two, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? For example, do the seasons affect what you read for pleasure? Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? I rarely take vacations, and when I do, I'm usually having too much fun. Like I took a vacation a few years ago to Venice Beach. I go to, and I visited Tom at Tom LA Books, and we were having too much fun to be reading. Although I did take a copy of my Cardi, The Divine Comedy, but we didn't have time to get out and read. Tom had his guitar there. We didn't have time to play anything. We were having too much fun at the beach and bars and restaurants. And then I went to visit Greg a couple of years ago and didn't do any reading. Well, I read before. I read A Worse Place Than Hell about the Fredericksburg battle. And we visited the battlefields and that. But, so that's the vacation part. Different seasons, like holidays, perhaps Halloween, I'll read a little more horror. Like in March, I read Irish things, and in June too, I kind of read Irish things for Joyce Bloomsday. In that regard, I do. 3, do specific experiences in your life ever shape what you choose to read? For example, did you read obsessively about child rearing when your kids were little? About gardening as spring is about to begin? About the experience of grief when someone you love died, etc.? Well, my sister did die last November unexpectedly, and I turned to meditation and some a Mark Nepo book he wrote on cancer, surviving that. Do I have that handy? No, I might, but I don't think I do. I do have a son who's grown now. He's 25, but yeah, we read Dr. Spock and all that, when he was a baby, and being born. So that's true. I had a period of like 10 years in Arizona, call it my lost weekend. Codependent relationship. It's been about 15 years actually, basically the 2000s. So I was in prison for drunk mouth. I would get in arguments with police, and they didn't like that, and they would kind of beat me up, charge me with ag assault, send me in, put me on probation for 3 years. I didn't make it through that, so I just said, no, I'll do the time. 1 year equals 11 months. So I would get good jobs. My first job was a librarian, where I had my own typewriter and key to the library. So I won't get into stories that went down there, but a lot of drug deals, a lot of fights happened in the library. But I repainted it and reorganized it, and then we had a big legal library too. Other jobs, I was a GED instructor in the joint. One time I was a teacher's assistant. That was a good job. A separate part of the yard. It was much better. You had to cross the street until they finally moved you over permanent. But so I would read constantly. If I'm not reading, I'm wasting time, right? Also, I studied Latin in prison for a year one time. The last time I was in, I'll put up a mugshot here. It's available for free. Anybody, it doesn't take much to find out about me. You know, I'm nothing major. I got a sheet as long as your arm, as they say, but it's over BS. Put it this way: they would charge me with ag assault, and after the first time, I can't take it to the box. I can't take it to trial. It's two police against me, their word against mine. I have priors for the same thing. I had to sign the plea bargain. Do the time. Well, you know, that part of my life's over, and it has been for since 2011. So, reading slumps. Now, this is going to be a good one. BookTube is full of discussions of reading slumps when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books. Sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you ever experienced a slump? Yes. If so, how did you handle it? If not, do you have any advice to give people who are experiencing slumps? Yes, don't make me get up to my Faulkner section, but last Faulkner in August, the book was Go Down Moses. In that book is the short story The Bear, which I have had read before, and I kind of reread it, but I couldn't get into it I total slump. I was not participating in the Voxer group because I wasn't reading it. It was hard to explain, but you know, what a time to get a slump when your own reading group is. But how did I get out of it? Boy, I just through time, and how did I? I can't remember. Just through another book. 6, booktubers also talk about book hangovers when readers are so moved by a book that they find it difficult to move on to a new book. Have you ever felt this way? Well, I'm finding it hard to read other books. I did read Muckle Flugga, the first book that I read, but we're into Gravity's Rainbow, and I really am finding it hard to read other books at this time. It's my third read. It's becoming like my Finnegan's Wake or Ulysses as far as annotations. I'm really enthralled with this book. So And I didn't get a chance to really talk about, well, here we go. 7. Tell us about a few books that almost always work for you. Okay, this is the question you've all been waiting for, that I've been planning for. Something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life despite any changing reading tastes, something that you always seem to hit just the right spot when you need a lift, something you go back to, and some books that are never far from my reach they're like right here. That I just come back to. It's going to explain a lot. And Naked Lunch, which just reminds me of 1984. That's Orwell took his inspiration from this book, but I love 1984. And then Catcher in the Rye and Clockwork Orange. These are books that move me, and I continue to read and buy and give away and have different editions of. I feel the same way about Tom Robbins, Jitterbug Perfume, and Another Roadside Attraction. Joyce. I continually go back to Dubliners. I'll tell you a little secret. Pat and I are going to do a Dubliners read-along sometime this year. Not in June. Too busy. Possibly December for the Christmas and the Dead or whatnot. So I hope you enjoyed my little stories. It was kind of impromptu. And I want to thank Pat and Daniela for tagging me and Hannah for the original tag. I'd like to tag Brian at Bookish and Tom, you mentioned. And who was I thinking about? Maeve, and Maeve Ever Reading, and Renee. I'd like to hear from MJ. If you do this tag, I appreciate it. Renee. And that's enough. If you'd like to do the tag, you're invited to. Thanks for your time and consideration. I remain yours. See you later.